If you want to just, thanks, okay. If you want to throw in like a yes or no, I've participated before, or just say where you're joining from today, we'd love to hear from you on that. Okay. So just in terms of the background, just for those of you that don't know, this actually started off as a really small pilot back in 2022, and we only had 25 schools that year, and perhaps there's one of those schools and teachers here today. And it's grown every year, which has been fantastic. And then this year, we'll have 122 schools taking part. So we're delighted to see that. The main purpose is to like explore, understand the health of your local river. So whether that's a big main channel or if it's a local stream, some people have looked at incredibly small streams, which is fantastic. So it's whatever is nearest and closest to you. Um, we have split it up into two main parts, a visual assessment to begin with, and then a water quality assessment. We do have an optional extra component where this is our second year running it, where you would have had to request an extra piece of kit and you work on an ecological kind of test or assessment of the river by doing a kick sample and looking at the macroinvertebrates that live in the bottom of the riverbed, so in and around the rocks. And that kind of is that extra little piece of information to help you understand the health. So that's the main gist. We have loads of schools taking part. And actually, what it means is, if I just do that quickly in my head, so most schools will just look at one river, but some have looked at two. So we would have looked at around 300 rivers so far in this, and that's amazing. So really good job. Um, yeah, I'm just wondering. So we have a quick poll, so you have to click on that one. So thanks for launching that. I was just wondering what your main concerns are around, participating in the campaign. I know people are worried about, not having enough knowledge on rivers. Like finding a local river that's suitable can be a challenge. And often if some, teachers are bringing big groups, like it's hard sometimes to manage students. And then, of course, we're all busy and sometimes just hard to find the time. So it's interesting for us to know what the pressure points are and I can see as the results are coming in now, there's a mixed, but choosing a suitable river access point is quite high there. And lack of knowledge on rivers, that's fair. And so just on the suitable river access point, like it is great if you can obviously go and walk along, part of the river in advance because you're trying to find a spot, obviously, that's, safe. Um, but also that you have a view of the river, and you can actually see the water and you can see the riparians, that area around the river. So if there is a small little tributary or something that you can get to, where you can get a little peek of the overall river system, that's ideal. And there's been so much, obviously, we all know there's been so much rain and some riverbanks have been eroded and, it would definitely be worthwhile if possible to have a look in advance. Okay, so we'll end that poll. And just for that's the breakdown there. Okay, so now my computer doesn't want to work for me, which is great. Okay, so just why are we doing this? So, there's 80,000 kilometers of river channel in Ireland, which is huge for such a small country. And we have over 3,000 rivers and streams in Ireland. So we're a small country, but we're very, very wet. And this comes as no surprise to anyone. Like we're one of the wettest countries in Europe. So we would receive somewhere between 1,000 to 1,600 millimeters of rain. And there's a lot of just wet land. So even that area around the rivers are peatlands and marshy areas. Like there's just a lot of wetlands. So what happens with that is that like so if we're trying to understand the health of our rivers, the EPA, so the Environmental Protection Agency, can't possibly examine the health of every single river that's out there. So they tend to focus on the main channels. And even at that, like it's like the monitoring will be spread over a cycle. So they might not even get to every river on their list every year. So this is where the importance of this campaign comes in and why they're so interested in people going out and measuring their local rivers. So that's why, this campaign was set up originally. So so how do the EPA, how do they assess health? Well, what they do is they use an ecological assessment. So this is the part of the campaign that was optional. And it's optional because one, you need a little bit more equipment, but also you have to get in the river to do the kick sample. So when the EPA do their monitoring, they categorize the health based on the kind of creatures that they find in the river. And some of the invertebrates are really sensitive to pollution and they're readily found in Irish rivers. So if you find a lot of these invertebrates that are sensitive, it's a good indication that your river is healthy. Whereas there are other invertebrates that are, more resilient and they can thrive in polluted water. So if you're seeing them and not the sensitive creatures, it's an indication then that there's poor health. So using this categorization scheme, they're able to say how healthy the river is based on like basically who's living there. And you can see these are results from 2023, but they kind of match, what's still the latest information on rivers. And you can see the blue, that's the high status, so they're the kind of almost pristine quality water. And we have that green color is good. And if you just look at the blue and the green, you'll see that's approximately half of the rivers fall into those categories. And then with the yellow is moderate, orange is poor, and the red is bad. And you can see it's kind of split between half of our rivers are doing fairly, fairly good, and then the other half are not doing as well. So we've got two problems. We've got loads of rivers around Ireland, loads of streams, very, very wet. And we do have an issue with our health of our rivers at the moment, that only half of them are in kind of good or high status health. So that's the purpose of this, and to see can we have a look in more detail at our rivers. So why do we have a problem with water pollution in Ireland? And like there are many different factors, but one big factor is how we use our land. And agriculture, unfortunately, is a big source of pollution. Now, we obviously rely on agriculture for, well, economic reasons, but also our dairy products and our beef we'll eat, and they're important, and it's important to have an agricultural industry, but we just have to be careful about how the best practices there. So that would be the biggest source of pollution, particularly nitrate and phosphate, which is part of your kit. You'll be measuring that in your rivers. Also, what else? The hydromorphology of the rivers too. That's just the shape. So, like, we've done a lot to our rivers over the years. We've straightened them, we've deepened them, we've got concrete banks, we put in weirs. There's lots of barriers to flow, and unfortunately, that does have a negative effect also on the pollution and the health of our rivers. And then an obvious one is the urban wastewater and urban runoff. Any school that's kind of in an urban area will have some impact from that. So it's just interesting to share that information with the students in advance of the campaign if possible. Okay, so we will just switch on over to uh, the timeline here. So we're here on the 5th of March. We're doing our teacher training. Thank you to those of you that did the pre-campaign training. So you will receive a certificate, and everyone that joins tonight will also be certified. That means that if you have a Globe account, you'll be marked as trained, and then you can submit data on water temperature or water pH directly to NASA using the Globe Observer app. So you will definitely everyone's going to receive a certificate, but then you'll also have the ability to submit that data to NASA. If you've already been trained through your participation before, nothing will change on the website side. Um, we will have an expert webinar on the 19th of March, and that's for students, and there's student prizes for questions and everything. And it's great to hear from our experts there. The actual monitoring period starts next Monday, that's the 9th, and it ends on the 24th of April. And just a side note, and I'll talk about this a bit later, we do have an end of year competition that we run annually. The deadline to submit a project for the end of year for the main category prizes is actually the 27th of March. And we've had to do that so to give people enough time in advance to get their projects together, but then also to be able to join us for our end of year event. If you have a Rivers project, however, and it won't be ready by that date, you can submit a later, like a guide, I guess, at that point of what you're doing and then update it then after the Easter break. So that was just trying to give you an opportunity to still take part. So after the end of the monitoring period, you will have another about a week to submit your river survey results, and there's a forum to do that. And then we have our student project sharing session on the 30th of April. And this is about our river ecosystem campaign for our expert webinar. There is a link here, and I'll put one of actually Sorka might do this, put a link to our teacher guidelines. Yeah, in in the chat box. Thank you. And then you can sign up. So we'll have the slides from tonight and the teacher guidelines, and in there you'll get links to sign up for all the different events that are happening. So what are we measuring in this campaign? We look at stream width and depth. If it's safe, or maybe you're on a bridge, we can use a measuring tape to do that for the width. And if it's safe to get into the water and you're comfortable with that, you can also measure the depth. If not, an estimate is absolutely perfect. We'll be looking at water temperature, water pH, and nitrate level and phosphate level. And as I mentioned, that optional macroinvertebrate study too. So some of you have received your equipment packs already. They did go out. We had them going out Monday and Tuesday. Um, Please let us know if you have not received your pack by next week. Um, I think some schools probably receive them the next day. So there's a thermometer in there. There's your pH strips, your indicator chart, your nitrate and phosphate kits. There's also some protective gloves, and you should have your river observation chart too, and a worksheet. And the worksheet was included because the information that you need to input onto that river survey form is contained in that worksheet. So if you follow on that worksheet on the day, you'll have all the information you need to submit on that form. We also have some lovely new PowerPoints that you can use in the classroom in advance of the river trip if you wish. We've broken them up into different levels. So we have kind of an upper primary, junior cycle, introduction to rivers and river ecosystems. And we also have a version for TY and senior cycle as well. And all the links are in the teacher guidelines. And then we also have that worksheet. If you want to print out some more, that link will be there. If you want to print out a new river observation poster, that will be there. And also more lessons around the campaign and exactly what you'll do at the river. And then I'm just putting this up as a reminder that you can go to the EPA catchments maps and have a look at the rivers close to you. And you may, you know, depending on the size of the river may have been monitored by the EPA in the past, and you can find some information on there. Okay, just about the river. The main thing, when you're selecting which river to go to is that you have easy access. Depending on how many students you have, it's important that it's easy to access and also easy to look up, stream and assess the whole as much as you can of the river. There's no need to enter the river unless you're doing that optional extra piece where you do the kick sample. Um, yeah, and I know river safety is really, an obvious one for everyone, but it's just check the weather in advance, and we've all seen how quickly our rivers can rise. And just given all of that, and there are probably a lot of unstable banks around and slippery surfaces. So definitely, check all of that in advance. Um, yes, you will have the waterproof, the gloves as well. Like, so just remember that if you're touching the water, and especially if you're in an area that you know is polluted, just it's worthwhile remembering them. And then in preparation, so you'll have your kit that you've got from Globe Ireland, but you also need a bucket and rope. So that's the one part that you didn't get in your kit. Um, you can use just a small bucket, so, that you don't need to be lugging around anything too big. And it's just about tying the rope onto the handle as best you can. And it's nice if there's a good bit of rope, because if for some reason you're not as comfortable going near to the edge of the river, you can actually throw the bucket over a bridge, or you can throw it in from a distance. So, and anyway, the students always really enjoy that part. So don't forget the bucket and rope. Measuring tape needed, just if you're actually going to be able to measure the width and depth And then obviously appropriate clothing and footwear. And I'm sure no matter how many times you tell the students to wear good footwear on the day, I can, yeah, doesn't always work out that way. And then, like I said, the hand sanitizer. Okay, so I am going to pass over to Eva now, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about what you're going to do at the river. Thanks, Eva.
No worries. Hi, everybody. So, at the river, this is where you will be able to follow along on the data sheet that you have received or will receive in the next few days in the post. Aileen, do you mind moving to the next slide?
I don't know why my computer is doing this. Apparently, I have to press
Okay.
it 3 times.
So once you guys arrive to the river, first step is a visual assessment. So this is kind of casual, go down, look around, what can you see? You want to get your students making observations and kind of thinking about the health of the river in the background. So what can you smell? What can you hear? Is there traffic? Is there birds? Has the river been altered? Is there concrete built up? Anything like that. A fun kind of activity that we like to do is have a competition who can spot the most animals or who can spot the most different types of trees or different types of plants, just to get students engaged and thinking about what's actually happening at their local river. It might be a spot that they pass all the time, but they haven't actually had much of a chance to look at. And this will be the first two pages on the data sheet. So Ellen, you might move next slide. Um yeah, first two pages of that data sheet will show you exactly what to ask. There's a few different sections to fill out. You measure the width of the river. That can be, you can use a measuring tape or a meter stick if you have them. But also if you're using a really big river, you can have a guesstimate or an estimate of how wide the river is. And there's nothing major, no measuring or anything like that in this section, just a visual assessment. And at the end of that, you can make a judgment of how healthy you think the river is. So there's the five different categories that the EPA use and choose what do you think that your local river which category does your local river fit into? And then after this, we move on to the chemical testing. Aileen, next slide. Thank you. So first up, we're going to collect a bucket of water. This is, for some students, this will be the most fun and exciting part, and this is where you want to have your long piece of rope so that you can reach into the river. You need to rinse out your bucket 2 or 3 times first to make sure it's not contaminated or anything. And also, it's no harm to make sure it's a clean bucket, just so we're not putting anything harmful into the river, especially maybe if it's something that we were using to, clean the floors or something at home. So rinse out your bucket and then collect a bucket full of water. And as Aileen was saying earlier, find a safe spot along the river to do that. Once you have your clean bucket or once you have your bucket full of river water, the first step is to measure the water temperature. You want to do this first because if it's an especially cold or warm day out, the temperature of your sample will change very quickly. So you have your thermometer in your kit, put it into the bucket with the bulb facing downwards, and it says in the instructions to get it 10 centimeters deep. If your bucket is too small and it doesn't go that deep, just get it as deep into the water as possible and leave it for 3 minutes. Check the temperature, then leave it for another minute. And if the temperature is the same as your first measurement, that's perfect. That's the temperature of your water. If it's changed, if it's continued to decrease or increase, then wait another minute until it's all equaled out and you have your river temperature measurement. The next step is to move on to your pH test. This is really simple, really quick. We've sent little plastic pH strips in your kits. You dip it into the water, take it out, shake it off, and then you'll have an indicator strip. So just match up the colors on your pH strip to the indicator chart, and that will tell you what the pH of the river is. I know some people said in the poll at the beginning that they're one of the concerns they have is not having enough information or knowing enough about river health. This is where your classroom resources really come in. So there's a section in the classroom resources in one of the sets of slides that tells you what affects the river temperature or the river temperature, the pH, and also what difference this makes to the health of your river. So it's good to have a look at that before you go out into the field, and then something you can talk about while you're doing that test. So you have your pH, note that down into the section on your data sheet, and the next step is to do your chemical tests. So there is two different tests that we're going to be doing in this campaign. So we'll be testing for nitrates and for phosphates. And this is probably the most tricky section of the testing. So you can see on the slide here, there's two different pieces of equipment down at the bottom with 1 and 2 next to it. So on the left-hand side, you have a little square and cubic sample cup. And this is what you'll fill this up with water. And similarly to with the bucket, rinse it out twice and then fill it up halfway. If you might be able to see it in the picture there, there is a small line, a little indent that shows you the halfway point. So fill it up to there. And then on the right hand side, you have two tubes. One of them is for testing nitrates, the other is for testing phosphates. They have an N and a P on the top of them to make it easy for you to see which one is which. And you start off by pulling a little yellow pin off the top of it, and that will leave behind a hole. And then you squeeze the tube to get the water out and then dunk it into your sample cup and let go. So it will create a vacuum and suck up the water that's inside of it. This can be tricky. You might have to turn it back around, squeeze it again to get more air out and stick it in to suck up the rest of the water. But just do your best, get as much water in from the cup as you can, and then give it a little shake. And Aileen, do you mind moving to the next slide? Give it a bit of a shake to mix the powder in the tube in with the water. And it says on the data sheet how much time to wait. So for the phosphate, it's 5 minutes. For the nitrate, it's 3 minutes. And after this time has passed, you can just check it against the sheet, and whichever color it is, that will tell you how much nitrates or phosphates are in your river sample. And again, there's lots of information about these chemicals, how they get into the water, and the effect that they have in the classroom resources. Once you finish this, dump the water back into the river from your bucket, and then you do it all again. You repeat it 3 times in total. So you've just done it once, 2 more times, and then you get the averages of all your measurements. It's really easy in the data sheet. There's a little box for each of your measurements, and then you just add them, divide by 3, and get your average. And then this is, I guess, the most important bit for us. Please do send us your data. There is in the teacher guidelines, there is a link that you can click that brings you to a survey, and it should be super simple to transcribe all the information from your data sheet into this survey. And that's what we can pass on to the EPA. There's some more information in the classroom guidelines, but the EPA obviously don't have the capacity to test every single river in the country. So the data that you collect is important. So do make sure to send that in, and the deadline for sending in your data is April 30th. And then also some of the measurements that you collect can be uploaded to Globe. So if you have the Globe Observer app downloaded onto your phone, the app will guide you through how to do it. You go into and put in your measurements, and then it's the hydrosphere section, and you can upload, it's the pH and the water temperature that can be uploaded to Globe, and that information is there for NASA scientists and also other groups of scientists around the world to use. So if it's useful for them, they're able to access that data.
That's
Um,
great, Aoife. We're just going to pause here for a moment to see if anyone has any questions. Are there any in the chat box?
Yeah, we've just got one in the chat box asking, do the river study and the kick sampling have to be done on the same river? From Mary Martin.
Yeah, that's a good question. Like in the perfect world, yes, but if that's not suitable for whatever reason, you obviously have to do what works best for you. The only thing I would say for that is that um, we need when you're filling out the form with your results, um, you would need to kind of separate them out. So then the where you did that first section using your regular kit, so input those results and then separately on a different form with a different name, obviously for the river that you've chosen to do the kick sample in, then just put in your kick sample information. Now I can see already there's going to be one problem with that is that I think some of the answers are required in that form. It's one of those ones that has a required answer. So then it's hard to move on to the next one if you don't input something. So if you want to do that, just let me know because I can make some modifications for you, or you could just send in the kick sample results by email. So hope that's not too confusing. But yeah, I'm just trying to think what would work best for you. Um, are there any other questions, Sorka?
Just a question about where we get our nitrate and phosphate testing kits, if
Oh,
someone wanted to do them at a different time in the year.
it's a good question. We get asked that one a lot. They're the same kits. The reason we use these ones is that the DCU uses the same ones for the water blitz, and if anyone's familiar with Earthwatch as well, they also use those kits. So they're well used and well understood. So they're a really good option. The only problem is the lab that makes them, they're based in Japan. So it's not the easiest thing to organize. And I think there would be a minimum order amount as well. Um, so yeah, it might be worth reaching out to Earthwatch. We could try to put a link in there because it could be possible. You'd have to probably sign up as a community group with Earthwatch, I think, to avail of them. But there are two things I can think of anyway, is Earthwatch and then getting in touch with the lab directly. But there could be a minimum order, and I don't know what that is. Anything else?
We have another question. Do you only test the river once?
So this is another really good question. Like ideally, it'd be nice, to go back and monitor your river over time, particularly around nitrate and phosphate, because they will fluctuate a good bit and actually can depend on rainfall, can depend on the season, and lots of different things. So yeah, I mean, do have options there because you all would have received three nitrate tests and three phosphate tests. So again, we were saying you should do three from the same river and get the average, but I'm also like conscious that that might, if you wanted to go and explore maybe the same river but three different times, that's fine too. If you could just make a note of it in your form that you did that so they weren't measured on the same day. And then obviously there's probably not much point in averaging them then. Um, but yeah, these are your kits. So the main thing is that when we share this data, that we have to know how it was gathered. So if you are going to do something that's not quite like what was in the guidelines, if you could just either send us an email or if possible, put a note in, then we understand, exactly what the situation was there. And if you did go at three different points along the same river, it would be really nice to know the different points if you had like a GPS or you could use that anyway to try to figure it out. But yeah, we really do want them, used in the way that you see fit as well. So anything else?
Someone is wondering, should we choose a different location to the EPA location if they've tested it before on the river? Should you go to theirs or a new spot?
Yeah, you could do it either way. Like they don't really get around often enough to make it such that another investigation is not needed. So yeah, I think you could do either. It'd be nice to compare yours to the EPA results. But likewise, if you think, it'd be interesting to go maybe upstream or downstream of that and compare them still, like that's fine. It's up to you and the students and what kind of questions they want to answer.
And then we had another question just about the competition projects.
Mm.
Can they combine different programs into one competition entry, or is it one program per project?
If they've taken part in multiple campaigns, I'm guessing, is that it? Yeah.
I would think
So
so, yeah.
yeah, like so we have, and actually that might be, do you know what? I am just gonna I'll talk about this in just a moment, but I'm going to jump ahead to this part. So we have our competition, right? And there's lots of different categories. So if you've taken part in more than one campaign from Globe Ireland, and we all know that like everything's related and it's all part of a big system. So if it makes sense for you to combine a project from like multiple different campaigns, like I think that's a great idea. And I think you could make an absolutely lovely project that way. Um, And there's so many categories here that you could still, be, in the running to get a prize out of, like scientific inquiry, outstanding song, science communication, action plans. So you could submit it with those categories in mind. And I think it'd be amazing. The other thing is that we do have campaign prizes too. So obviously for the river campaign prizes, it would be a rivers project that's submitted. So if you wanted, and you're more than welcome to submit multiple projects. Like if some students want to just focus on the campaign, like right now with rivers, and others would prefer, to go off and work on a song or some kind of creative writing. You can submit as many as you want. So, we would normally get, I don't know, over 100 projects in, which is not a huge amount. So we do find that with the amount of awards we have, there are plenty of prizes going, let me put it that way. So don't be afraid to submit more than one project. How are we doing, Sorka? Are there any more questions?
That's everything for now, I think.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We'll stop again in just a minute to see if there are any more. I'm just going to run back to this part. So there are optional activities, like we've mentioned, and one of them is doing this ecological assessment. And I just wanted to mention that, like, so if you signed up for the extra kit, the kits are actually they're sent separately. So if you haven't received, and this happens, they went in the post Monday and Tuesday, so they didn't all go in at the same time. So if you haven't received your optional kit, it's probably on the way. And if you're unsure whether you signed up, like maybe this happens to me all the time, you think about it and you're not sure if you actually did it or not, just send us an email and we can confirm with you that you did or not sign up for it. So when you go to do this ecological assessment, just be a bit more careful around the river, obviously, because you will be getting in. So it's a little bit different. And just make sure the river water level is, definitely below your knees. Ideally, like 20 to 30 centimeters. You don't really need deep water. And in fact, if you have like a gravelly area, um, it's like tends to be well oxygenated. You see a little bit of turbulence there. That's perfect. So if you just want to make sure you don't go in too deep. We use the Law Pro, well, it was originally UCC, but UCC Law Pro Citizen Science Stream Index. So what you receive from us is a net and a tray, and your this form and also a freshwater guide. But what you're going to do, if you want to submit your data to LawPro and complete this form, you need to take 3 samples. So you'll need to have 3 different trays as part of this. And what you're doing, so going back to that pollution sensitive invertebrates versus pollution tolerant. So the pollution sensitive ones are called the good guys, and the tolerant invertebrates are called bad guys. And so basically what you're going to do is, and actually, to be honest, when I was first learning this, you know, it's quite funny in some ways how easy it is to identify these good and bad guys. Um, you really just have to pay close attention to a couple of things. So with the good guys, they tend to be not as common, right? So the main thing you can look out for is on the stonefly. So if you look at the picture of the stonefly up here under the good guys, they have 2 tails, and you can use, and they're quite they're like, you can zoom in and have a look at this picture now when you get this resource, but like you will see there's quite a lot of segmented parts, and you can really obvious features that you can use to identify it. And this is compared to the flattened mayfly, which is just to the right of it, that has 3 tails, and it really does have a flattened head. It looks like someone literally got a hammer and hammered down their heads. They're quite fat compared to the rest of their body. This is important because I think most samples I have looked at have swimming mayfly as well. And if you look down the bottom, you'll see the swimming mayfly, and he also has 3 tails, but a much narrower head. So that's how you differentiate between the two of them. And also the green caddisfly is the last good guy, and he is genuinely green. Um, And there are brown caddisflies and even pink ones. You can see here at the bottom, there's a pink caddisfly and then a brown caddisfly. So if you're not sure at times, the green caddisfly is very green. That's all I could say on that one. So there are three good guys, and then the three bad guys are there's a leech. The leech you should be able to differentiate from a worm because they're not the same thickness along their length. We have seen a good few leeches in some of our rivers around Dublin, unfortunately, um, and not so many good guys sometimes. But they should be easy to identify, and they do latch on to the tray and the net. So you'll see them like connected to it. It's the thing that when you throw your water back in at the end, you will be left over with a leach that maybe you hadn't identified beforehand. And then the snails, they tend to be quite small, so just watch out for that. And sometimes it's confusing between the snail and gravel, so you kind of have to put your gloves on and get in there. And the water louse looks very much like the wood louse that you'd have in the garden, so just in the water. So that's easy enough to identify. So the good guys and the bad guys, and you simply then fill in the sheet. We can go back and talk about that. It's a +1 if you see one of the good guys, and a -1 if you see a bad guy, and you fill it in per sample. So you're not counting how many are there, you're just like identifying the presence of is +1 for each good guy and for each bad guy. And then you'll get a score for each tray, and then you just add it up. So it's fairly simple. All the instructions are on there. Um, just when it comes to doing the kick sample, it's really just, it's half a minute and you're just kicking around at the bottom because they are under the rocks and some of them are really clinging onto the rocks. So you kind of have to dig your heel in a bit. You're going to be in a gravelly, rocky area, hopefully, and you're just kicking around for a minute. And if you can move to a couple of different locations, just do 10 seconds here, 10 seconds there, that's fine too. And then when you've got that sample in your net, because your net's going to be downstream. So when you have that sample in there, you just pull the net out and then you empty the contents into your tray. And ideally, you have water in your tray, so river water in your tray before you empty them in. And because then they're not concerned, then they're happy little macroinvertebrates. So that's how you do it. There's links to YouTube video on how to do a kick sample. It's on the sheet, but also we can provide them. And if you have any questions at all, just get in touch. WhatsApp, we can have a phone call, we can, talk about any of it. If you want to get in touch with Law Pro as well, they have community water officers in multiple areas. They don't always work with schools. There's a bit of variability between their who each community water officer works with, but it's worth going to their website. I don't know if we can get the Law Pro website up and put a link in for that, maybe.
I've just put one in the chat
Oh,
there.
you did. You see, you're so far ahead of me.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. So you can get in touch with Law Pro and they'll let you know either way if they can go and assist. Okay, so I mentioned our student webinar. They're a great opportunity to present. We have Globe schools participating from Slovenia this time and Ukraine. Perhaps some teachers are here from those countries. So we're really delighted to have them take part as well. And they will hopefully join us at our student webinar as well. And if you would like to sign up for the Zoom link, the link is there. And also you can email us if you're interested in presenting. And we mentioned the project deadline is the 27th of March, which is a little bit tight for our river folk, but I did say you could hand in the main project a little bit later. So if anyone has any questions on that, let me know. And there are prize and award categories. So I am curious, given our earlier submission date, if you wouldn't mind real quick letting me know if you plan on submitting a Globe project. It's absolutely fine either way. I am just curious. So we have That's great. We'll just give a couple more seconds. Maybe we'll just end that now, or almost everyone is. Yep. So there's a real spread there, which is fine. And I can see that would definitely have people sending in projects. Not enough time is definitely a problem. So we will think on this again, and maybe 1 year we'll have it all worked out. But we're delighted to see that people are interested, and we'll definitely be sharing some resources and project templates to make it a little bit easier. That's great. Um, there's loads of ways, to act on your results, and we can provide more resources around them. But I know people have, done lovely river cleanups and done nice awareness campaigns around the school. So that's always an option, and we love to hear about it. I think sometimes, if you're involved at Green Schools, you have more ideas than us around that. Okay, so I just want to ask if there's any more questions before we finish up.
There was a question for in the chat box, can you still sign up for kick sampling?
Um, Good question. So this depends on what equipment we have left in the office. So I think we do have a few more trays, and that's not many though, right? And we have the guide. So yes, so we do have a few more in the office. Um, they would not get to you until later next week. So if you're planning on doing your river trip earlier next week, they wouldn't be there in time. So if you still want to sign up, I think you'd probably need to send an email or let us know in the chat box or WhatsApp like as soon as possible. Um, yeah,
The other question was just if they haven't started their project yet, is it too late?
no, definitely not too late. Like the thing is, for these projects, like obviously people will have different ideas around, their project and what they want to do, but all projects are welcome. Like if you can just even share some photos of your experience at the river, some information about your local river, why it means something to you, like what you'd like to see um happen to it in the future, like that's still nice. And if you can include like an action plan around how you would potentially change something, right? Maybe just doing more river cleanups or something, or maybe planting more trees along the sides of the river, any kind of like actions around it. I mean, that's a project to us. So we're delighted with what we've seen over the years. We've had some amazing submissions, very creative submissions. So it doesn't have to be hard science. And I can see a poll has gone up just asking about whether this training is useful. And we're always happy to get feedback on this. So if you have any thoughts, you're welcome to share them with us. Send us a WhatsApp or email. And just to reiterate, like this is all, like we're around for the duration of this campaign and ready to support you. So any questions at all, um, absolutely fine to engage with us on that, and we're happy to help. Okay, I'll just give a minute for that last poll. I think almost everyone. So I'm glad that everyone's finding it useful and helpful. That's great. So thank you so much. Did we stay on time? Almost. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. And yeah, I hope you all have a good time at the river. I'm jealous. Enjoy yourselves and just keep in touch. And if you want to share any photos on the WhatsApp group, we'd love to see them.
Sorry, just really quickly there was one more question. Is there people employed in the county councils that work on the rivers? Law Pro have community water officers, is that their title?
That's community, yeah,
Yeah,
water officers.
and you can link in with them and sometimes they will be able to help you or share information and resources and things.
Yeah, and maybe the environmental awareness officers, they could probably help as well. Like it's a really good idea to reach out and have someone join you. So um yeah. And we will be doing workshops with some of you. I think that if you signed up, we will be joining you on the river as well. So we will get out for a few river investigations. Okay, I think that's everything. We'll just hang out here for a minute or two just in case anyone has a last minute question. Um, I'll just stop sharing this. And
Yeah.
just yeah, Maria, just see your comment there. Um, we have recorded the training tonight, and so it'll be shared on the WhatsApp. We'll probably email it around as well, a link around. And then Mark's asking, can you please email to say where we participated? Mark, just a quick question. Is that for the optional kit or is that the main kit? Like, in fact, we could probably check that right now. Eva, can you see if Mark, I think I remember his name from the packs.
Oh, Mark,
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. So we provide certificates to teachers for training. So that will show that you spent extra time. Yeah. So the hours, we'll just make sure to include the time on the certificate if that would work, or would you prefer some different way of communicating that? Ideally, we'd love if you'd all get like EPV days or some kind of time back for doing this, but I think the certificate might help. Perfect. Yeah. We'll make sure they're sent. Those should be there by or it'll be early next week because we're at an event tomorrow. Okay, any more questions just before we close out? Okay, well, I hope you all have a lovely evening. If we didn't cover something, like I said, just get in touch. Okay.